For ICE agents, phones are the most productive tool in the arsenal. The technology strips away the right to privacy. Point the camera at a subject, and seconds later, immigration status, vehicle records, travel history, and social media info appears. St. Paul, Minnesota, January 2026. Judy Levy gets a message that ICE agents are staging in a nearby parking lot. She drives over to observe. When the agents leave, she follows. After failing to shake her, they surround her vehicle and snap a picture. A masked agent walks up to her window and says, "Hello, Judith. How can I help you?" When identification is instant, investigation is optional, and the whole world becomes a perpetual lineup. Welcome to the Capital Paradox. This economy's been running on cooked books, and we're here to conduct the audit. We track the laws, lobbyists, and loopholes engineered to favor profit over progress. Today we're investigating how the Department of Homeland Security has bypassed the Constitution by building a surveillance infrastructure that turns every face into a suspect profile. We'll look at how private companies profit from biometric databases, how Congress is uninterested in stopping them, and what happens when the federal government lays siege to a Midwest city. An ICE agent snaps a photo. Let's break down what happens next. After the photo uploads, the screen doesn't just return a name, it returns an entire life. Mobile Fortify is the in-house app developed by US and Border Protection that turns every ICE agent's government-issued iPhone into a biometric scanner. With it, the agent is able to run something called a super query. This reaches into the federal government's databases. A dozen departments are queried simultaneously. The screen populates with a recent passport or visa photo. It shows every entry and exit made from a US border. It displays immigration status and maps a relationship web of family, roommates, and known associates. The AI assigns a confidence percentage. If that number is high enough, the officer treats the data as gospel. Clearview AI is a small, New York-based startup responsible for ending public anonymity.
Clearview is basically a search engine for faces. So anyone in law enforcement can upload a face to the system, and it finds any other publicly available material that matches that particular face.
Founded in 2017 by Australian techie Honton That, the company deployed automated scrapers to steal over 50 billion images from every corner of the internet. They ignored the cease and desist orders from Google, Facebook, and Twitter by claiming a First Amendment right to take whatever is publicly visible. The UK, France, and Italy declared the company illegal and issued tens of millions of dollars in fines. The US government, on the other hand, became a customer.
So how many paying law enforcement at the moment?
Well, we don't disclose that.
Okay.
But they're all very happy customers, put it that way.
In September 2025, ICE finalized a $9.2 million contract with Clearview AI, turning an national pariah into the backbone of their identification system. But 50 billion images wasn't enough. Uncle Sam wanted to track ideas too. Zignal Labs is an AI platform used by the Israeli military. It analyzes 8 billion social media posts a day, clustering them into narratives. It could be a community organizing a legal defense fund or a group planning a protest. It tracks how the story spreads, who the key influencers are, and where the epicenter of the conversation is located. It's narrative surveillance. The AI doesn't just monitor what people say, it maps how movements are formed. The next step is converting online activity into an address. Location data from everyday apps is bundled and sold through data brokers. ICE adds it to the cart and hits checkout. Tools like LocateX allow device location history to be queried through advertising IDs. Agents can geofence an area, such as a migrant community, and identify every device present. Venntel provides access to large-scale commercial location datasets. ICE uses it for pattern of life analysis, probable residents, workplaces, and daily routines. But this brokered data only provides location history. It doesn't provide real-time location. That's what the Crossbow is for. It's a new, secretive device called an IMSI catcher that mimics cell towers when the Crossbow is activated, or its portable counterpart, KingFish. Nearby phones connect automatically, treating it as a legitimate tower. This provides a real-time location feed for the device, accurate up to just a few meters. Once they have the location data, they need a system to make sense of it all. Palantir ImmigrationOS is the command center, a $30 million centralized dashboard that fuses everything together. Facial recognition from Mobile Fortify, location pings from Venntel, social media profiles from Clearview, real-time positioning from the Crossbow. Every data point ICE has collected flows into Palantir's system. The OS assigns a score and recommends enforcement action. Palantir didn't build this for immigration enforcement. They built it for the battlefield, tracking insurgents, mapping terror networks, and identifying high-value targets. It should be illegal to deploy this technology on American streets, and it would be. But of course, there's a loophole. The government's primary defense for this dragnet is a legal technicality called the commercial data loophole. Under the landmark Supreme Court case, Carpenter versus the United States in 2018, the government is required to obtain a warrant to track cell phone location.
I want to see that warrant.
What?
I want to see that goddamn warrant.
There you go. Let's go.
However, in a 2025 legal memo, ICE argued that this rule doesn't apply to data purchased from brokers like Venntel or Clearview.
You snotty little bastard.
The logic? Because users voluntarily shared location with a weather app or a game, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. As of 2026, several actions have been taken in an attempt to restore those rights. In January, the ACLU filed suit against Department of Homeland Security regarding a tool called Elite. This Palantir dashboard reportedly pulls data from non-enforcement sources, including Medicaid records and health department data, to find deportation targets. The ACLU accurately argues that this mission creep turns essential social services into traps.
We're getting a closer look now at ICE's Operation Metro Surge in the Twin Cities earlier this month.
In November 2025, the federal government launched Operation Metro Surge, flooding the Twin Cities with thousands of masked agents using real-time facial recognition. The Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison filed a federal lawsuit against DHS. The state argues that this military surge violates the 10th Amendment right of state sovereignty. He's also accusing the feds of defying the Equal Protection Clause by using AI to racially profile Somali and Latino neighborhoods. While the courts deliberate, Congress continues to sit on the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act. The act would ban federal agencies from buying personal data from brokers without a warrant. Despite the Biden White House formally opposing the bill, in 2024 it still managed to pass in the House. Privacy advocates argue it's the only way to stop the government from shopping its way around the Constitution. As of this recording, it's expected to die in the Senate. In the meantime, these surveillance tools are being used to lay siege to the American Midwest. As mentioned earlier, the federal government launched Operation Metro Surge in late 2025. The justification? Investigating a $250 million COVID-era fraud scandal. The target? Minneapolis' Somali population. The initial deployment was between 100 to 600 specialized agents. On January 5, 2026, just 2 days before the killing of Renée Good, the Department of Homeland Security escalated. They deployed 2,000 to 3,000 federal agents to the Minneapolis area. The force is larger than the combined police departments of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Governor Tim Walz called it a military occupation. By January 16, 2026, more than 2,500 people had been arrested in Minnesota. This is what warrantless surveillance looks like at scale. A city under siege, a constitutional crisis measured in arrests per day. Traditional law enforcement requires 3 things: visible identification, stated authority, and warrants for searches. ICE operates with none of these. Federal regulations require immigration officers to identify themselves and state the reason for arrest as soon as it is practical and safe to do so. ICE has interpreted practical and safe so broadly that the rule has effectively disappeared. Agents argue that revealing their identities in hostile urban environments puts their family at risk. The government justifies anonymity as a response to doxing threats. Under the First Amendment, the public has a right to know who is exercising the power of arrest. The Visible Act, standing for Visible Identification Standards for Immigration-Based Law Enforcement, is trying to enforce ICE agents to adhere to responsible policing standards. The act calls for ICE agents to have visible badge numbers, identifiable uniforms, and no face masks. Anything that might distinguish them from a kidnapping crew. But the Visible Act is seen more as a messaging bill for the opposition. As of this recording, it doesn't stand a chance in making it through the Republican-controlled Congress.
We're going to keep focusing enforcement resources on actual threats to our security. Felons, not families.
The Obama administration deported approximately 410,000 people annually at its peak in 2012, without mass surveillance.
Assailed by some advocacy groups for being the deporter-in-chief. The Obama administration has deported more than the sum of all the U.S. presidents of the 20th century, 2.5 million and counting, including last year when 91% were said to have had criminal records.
When someone was arrested by local police, their fingerprints were automatically shared with DHS. If the prints matched an immigration record, a detainer was issued. Obama's administration also expedited removal by allowing border agents operating within 100 miles of the border to deport anyone caught without seeing a judge. Border stops became formal removals and deportations surged without the help of Palantir. In 2025, the Trump administration created Operation Homecoming, offering any individual without legal status $1,000 and a government-funded flight home. In December of the same year, the Department of Homeland Security used social media to announce the Going Ho Ho Home campaign. It tripled the incentive to $3,000 to anyone who registered to self-deport by December 31st. Comparatively, it costs on average $17,000 to arrest, detain, and forcibly remove a single undocumented person. Over the course of 2025, 1.9 million immigrants self-deported. Both models achieved high numbers without turning American cities into war zones. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act was signed into law July 4th, 2025. It nearly tripled the budget of immigration, customs, and enforcement. For the fiscal year of 2026, ICE will have $28.7 billion at its disposal, surpassing the budget of the FBI, DEA, and ATF combined. In 2025, the Department of Homeland Security used this cash infusion to hire over 10,000 new agents. Amid this surge, on January 7, 2026, Renée Nicole Good was killed by ICE agent Jonathan Ross in South Minneapolis. She was 37 years old, a U.S. citizen, a poet, and a mother of 3. It took the Department of Homeland Security less than 3 weeks to kill another U.S. civilian. This time, 37-year-old Alex Pretti, who was filming a border patrol operation in Minneapolis at the time of his death. He was a nurse for the VA hospital and a cyclist who had dedicated his life to helping others. In leaked DHS guidance, officers are instructed to gather identifying information on anyone who films them.
It's not illegal to record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, why are you taking my information down?
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist, so...
We're videotaping you?
The stated goal is to create a database of anti-ICE protesters. The Trump administration is framing observers as part of a nationwide network of domestic terrorists. Back in St. Paul, after the masked agent identified Judith, the ICE vehicles pulled away. Judith and her husband Noah continued to follow them. The convoy turned onto their street and stopped in front of their house.
And then they ended up, 3 or 4 of them, rolled up on the curb right across the street from our house and stayed there for a little bit.
But it is incredibly intimidating. I'd be lying if I didn't say it was intimidating.
Judith said the harassment made her more determined.
I wasn't raised to sit back and not do something when people are being kidnapped and families are being terrorized and good, hardworking people who make up the fabric of this community.
They're not going after criminals.
Are being persecuted? No, they're not going after criminals. They're not going after criminals.
The surveillance stack built for immigration enforcement, powered by Clearview, Palantir, and others, is now pointed at anyone who questions it. In this new war on migrants, ordinary Americans have become the target. Thanks for watching Season 1 of The Capitol Paradox. We'll be back on April 7th with our Season 2 premiere.